There we go.
So you were working with the food bank before
Yes.
and you're back. How does that feel?
It feels really amazing. Worcester County is in a lot of ways my home base. My parents both grew up in Sturbridge and Southbridge, and I have a lot of cousins in the area, and I grew up going to Lake House and Brimfield, so nearby. And Worcester was kind of like our city growing up. Working at Worcester County Food Bank from 2018 to 2022 meant that I was there when the pandemic hit. I was there pre 2020 when we were really making some real movement in advocacy and different steps. And then when the pandemic hit, we were able to collaborate in such a way with our partner agencies that in many ways, those 2 years were some of the most important in my career. And I think that will be true for the rest of my life. And I'm excited to come back because I have such an awareness of the strength of our partner agencies, of our collaborators, of like who we work with, of our legislators and representatives. It's it's a place where I think that in a lot of ways hunger is solvable, and if it's not solvable, the community is willing to continue to do the work to support each other.
That's great. I love hearing that because I Worcester is my adopted city and I can't imagine ever being from anywhere else. Um, Tell me a little bit about you mentioned advocacy. How
Mhm.
important is advocacy? What kind of advocacy are we talking about?
I think from the point of view of a food bank, advocacy should always be focused on the mission. And the mission is to end hunger, to reduce food insecurity, and to look at how we can change the system. In my opinion, hunger in the United States, and especially in Massachusetts, is a human created issue. It isn't, we aren't having, people don't have trouble accessing food because of a lack of food. There's trouble accessing food because of a lack of access to grocery stores, a lack of access to money, and a lack of access to transportation, and a whole bunch of other pieces that intersect there and cause food insecurity and hunger. So when a food bank is thinking about advocacy, we have to be utilizing our strength and the our connections and our position in the community to change the system, not to grow the system as it is, because the system as it is isn't working. So what I mean when I say advocacy is we need to look at how the policies are working for people right now, and we need to be raising our voices and supporting people to raise their voices to make changes within the system and within policies.
Great answer. One of the people tend to think of food pantries and food banks and the Worcester County Food Bank as an emergency food thing. And we know from experience that more and more people are relying on a trip to the local food pantry as part of their weekly grocery, as part of their monthly grocery shopping. How do we, how, I'm trying to think of the best way to form this question because I know how we change that perception.
Hmm.
But what what steps would you take to maintain an emergency food supply? Because we're always going to need that. There will
Hmm.
always be the person who loses their job and has nowhere else to turn.
Yes.
But we shouldn't be relying on an emergency food system as part of our regular access to food. What would be your top three priorities to change that?
Hmm. I think I think it's always a both and. So food banks were created as an emergency food system, right? They were created mostly in response to an emergency in the early 80s when our social safety net changed really quickly, really fast. And we're seeing some real reflections of that right now.
Mhm.
And so, in a lot of ways, right now, I would say, and during the pandemic, the food pantries and meal programs were showing up as emergency feeding programs in a lot of ways. Like that system had to show up fast and it had to um, show its strength, demonstrate its strength, and in some ways its weaknesses. But in Worcester County, because I was here at that time, I happened to be able to say and know that we didn't close any food pantries during that time, even though um, in some cases that did happen. So, yes, to your point, do we need an active and strong emergency food system available to people? Yes, we do. Um, and uh, as you were saying, the people do use food pantries and meal programs as their everyday access to food. And that is because we are not paying a living wage in this country. And even if people are making living wages, um, sometimes they aren't making enough hours. There's a whole bunch of other pieces
Mhm.
there that play in. And we're not recognizing what it takes to access food in our country and in our cities and rural areas. One thing about Worcester County is that it's all of central Massachusetts. It's South County, South Massachusetts to all the way up to the north,
Right.
the northern border, which means that people have multiple barriers to food access, including transportation, including active and affordable groceries, all of those pieces. So when I think about how can we like change what needs to be changed, we need to be talking to the entire food system, not just to pieces of it. Um, yeah, I think I'm not sure that I totally answered your question, but I think that's really what I think about it is that it has to be a systems wide response, and we have to be talking across um, industry, not just to farmers, also to grocers, not just to um, emergency feeding people. Also need to be looking at restaurants and where the food is moving through the food system and in what way and why. Because different pieces, when the economy changes, how we look at and how we access food changes as well.
Absolutely. I've always argued that you can't make changes one at a time in something that is this systemic, especially with food. Food is like at the root of everything.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and
how
I think the other piece about emergent, like if we call feeding people an emergency, or if we're talking about an emergency, are we really? What are we saying? Because most of the time, most of us expect to eat 3 times a day or a few times a day. And it's really important that we all have access to food every day. So if you are provided for food in one day, do you know where your food is going to come from the next day? And how are we ensuring that that is true? And in order to ensure that's true, people need money, they need transportation, they need access to housing. Sometimes they need to be able to cook the food. There's those other pieces that play into to food that we need to be considering and thinking about.
I agree. I don't know if you know, one of the other hats that I wear is as the main administrator for the Mutual Aid Worcester page. Um, and I can tell you for a fact that while most of us expect that we'll eat 1 or 2 times a day, there's a whole lot of people and a growing number of people who don't know if they're going to eat tonight, let alone tomorrow,
Hmm.
and don't know what they're going to eat tonight. And I can tell you that the people who are most likely to help when that happens are people who didn't know where they were going to eat yesterday.
Yes.
Because when you've been there, that's like the impetus behind all of the spend spend a month on Snap, right? Learn what it feels like to not know, except you really do know where your next meal is coming in those. I don't know if there's any way to actually get it across to somebody who has never had to wonder, if they'll have something to eat tonight, what it feels like to
Hmm.
not know.
Yeah, what does it mean when you don't know, when you don't have anything in your cabinets or in your refrigerator, if you have a working refrigerator? What does it
Hmm.
mean when all of those pieces are not available to you? And how do we respond as humans? And how do we take care of each other in those moments when we know right now, to your point, Deb, that that is increasing right now, that um, lack of access to safe and healthy food, or to food at all, to what you can eat um, for sustenance, is decreasing for a lot of our families and a lot of people, a lot of our neighbors. And that's a frightening thought. And to your point, with a lot of mutual aid groups, I'm aware of that too, that um, it's hard to look away once you've had that experience, and when you're the closer you are to that experience.
Yes. You said something really important. How do we respond as humans?
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that I always loved when I first started working with the food bank, um, the tagline that we used on all of our social media profiles was food is a human right. How do you phrase that? How do you talk to people who say, are we just going to give people free food?
I say yes. I mean, I come from a long line of Italian women. My mother's
Oh,
Italian American. And yes, free food, yes. I mean,
mhm,
I was just with my family, and I'm the youngest of three, and we were having a dinner, and I said to my mother, am I right that we had a bed in the basement of our house when I was young, where like kids, because my father worked at the local high school, where kids would sleep? And my mother was like, yes, like, of course
mhm,
that happened. Like, of course, like we were the kids who we would have a friend at the dinner table. Like we couldn't call ahead. It was free cell phones, but we would show up for dinner time. We knew that there was going to be
mhm.
dinner on the table. And we had no idea that my mother was raising the three of us on one income, on just our father's income, which was a
Right.
teacher's salary. And what that also meant for the calculations she was doing in her head, we didn't notice. But what
Hmm.
we knew was that people should always be fed. Like, there was no question. I would be like, I just met Dorothy on the bus this morning. She's coming to dinner.
Right.
And, that happened, that was just a part of the fabric of my family, and I
Mhm.
can't uh, let that not be a part of the fabric of my life and the way that I live my life now, and the way that my career has moved forward has had that kind of flair in it throughout my life, and throughout my career. And so when I think about um, the changes that are happening right now on the federal level and on the state level to SNAP and food stamps, when I
Mhm.
think about the changes because of a lot of things happening at the federal level for our neighbors to access food at all, to feel safe being in our neighborhoods,
Mhm.
um, I think, yes, food should be free. There should be access to healthy foods. There shouldn't be no test for it.
Mhm.
People, in whatever way, if it were up to me, we would have a very different system. Um, and so, yes, if people say to me, like, what, should we just give people free food? The answer is yes, we should be feeding each other
I completely
in the
agree.
ways that we
So
need
you
to.
must love school meals for all.
Yes,
If you
yes,
walk in the door, you get fed. I mean, you got to be here 6 hours a day. Where else do we make people sit for 6 hours a day and not give them food? But yeah, there are so many questions, so many things I could say about SNAP right now. But
yeah. I was just on Pat Baker and Vicky Regis held coalition call this morning. I
oh, I
was just
missed
on that
that.
call. It was a great conversation about changes that Massachusetts DTA is requiring in order
Mhm.
to, because of other things that are happening, but in a bigger context. And we need to be pushing back, as Pat Baker will be the first one to say, like, DTA is currently understaffed. We need to be responding. We need to make sure and to keep raising our voices about that, so that if a person makes a phone call to our Department of Transitional Assistance, and that somebody answers that phone call
Right.
and they get their questions answered, and they receive the access to support that they need and should, and that we have said as a state we believe should be happening.
Mhm. And we can't reasonably hold them accountable if they don't have the tools to do the job that we are holding them accountable for.
Hmm.
Um, there are, like I said, there are so many things. There are across the country, states are putting restrictions, more restrictions on the foods that you can buy with SNAP. I'm like, let mom buy the birthday cake, please. Right? Let mom buy the birthday cake. And who cares? But
Who cares? And not only that, to your point, who cares? I mean, that's just adding an administrative burden to our
mhm,
entire system that we are, if we create more regulations around the benefits that people have access to, um, we create a more difficult system to move through.
mhm,
And also, when studies are done that show that research and track people who are given what might be called a universal basic income, or just a standard of cash for
right.
our dollars, usually on a
Mhm,
Visa card, for an amount of time, um, without fail, the bulk of the dollars are spent at the grocery store. They're
mhm.
spent on food, and
And they are spent on healthier food.
they're spent on healthier food. Yes, yeah. I spent the last 3 years in my kind of interlude in between my Worcester County Food Bank time, running fresh truck mobile markets,
I love that, by the way. Absolutely love that.
and it is, you know, what a joy to spend a day, 2 to 3 hours with people who are waiting to get onto a bus to purchase high quality, beautiful, fresh fruits and vegetables.
Hmm.
Um, and it's people will spend that time because the food is available. It's healthy. It will feed their children and their family and themselves in a way that is meaningful and that they want to feed themselves. So yes, let mom buy the birthday cake. Um, let the kid have a pizza and soda for on Friday night, and also the food is going the um, choices that people make are almost always going to be in service to a healthier family and a healthier community.
And right, and the community. Let's not forget that when we spend that money locally on fresh produce that's locally grown, we're supporting our farmers. We're supporting all of the stores and all of the people who have jobs at those stores. And it would be the same whether it's SNAP dollars or cash. It's it's money circulates in the community.
Hmm.
I have had people question the whole for every dollar in SNAP that's spent, it circulates a dollar plus in the community. I've had people question that because they don't understand how you can pass a dollar around from person to person and have it be worth more than a dollar. So maybe we need to do some better education around that. But I think the SNAP multiplier is a very real thing too. I think
Hmm.
supporting people who have jobs, who need jobs, and I hate to admit it, but even spending money at Walmart means that they have to keep cashiers on. They have
Yeah,
to
they have
keep
to
those
keep
people
cash. They have to
employed.
keep the doors open.
Right. And they are actually doing a much better job of buying locally these days. Just
Hmm.
saying.
Well,
Um,
and I think even the buying locally, uh, I could have a lot. We could have a deeper and longer conversation about what it means to buy locally,
mhm.
and buying locally and buying from our farms and from local producers and local grocers and independent grocers is really, really important. And also, the fact that we still have these major big box stores like Walmart, like Whole Foods owned by Amazon, that are very proud of their locally grown and purchased foods, um, is a testament to the fact that speaking up works, and continuing to push and having the conversation. While sometimes I think like that's not my priority, but it is a priority, and it is really important that the priority continues to be talked about, so that, because in the current society that we're in a capitalist society, what is talked about gets noticed and can be marketed. And so
Mm-hmm.
when local foods are brought to the forefront, we can uh, encourage and get our corporations to purchase them, and we can also support our independent producers and smaller shops and all of those pieces that are so extremely important to our
Mm-hmm.
communities being who they are. That's something that I love about Worcester, about Central Massachusetts, is that each community is really proud of who they are. People do know each other. People do know their neighbors, and people are working to create a relationship with each other. And and we do that through food and through a lot of other things. But through food is something that people need to purchase almost every day, or find, or utilize every day. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a really great indicator of what's going on in the economy.
So I want to ask you a question that might seem out of left field,
Mhm.
about the food truck program. You weren't working for a food bank or a food agency when you came when with that, were you?
So Fresh Truck is an independent nonprofit. It was when I went to work there. It was a program of About Fresh. About Fresh is now a national program that has a prescription card that people can use in different grocery stores. It's called the Fresh Connect card, and they do other research and food access work. And they're really pretty strong in the food as medicine
Mm-hmm.
world. But Fresh Truck was one of the earliest programs that they started. Um, and no, it's not part of a food bank. It is an independent nonprofit that runs 23 different mobile markets throughout Boston. Uh, every day
Okay.
of the week, there's a market somewhere in Boston that somebody can go to and purchase at cost, low cost fresh fruits and vegetables, and they can use their healthy incentive program dollars, their HIP dollars, to purchase. But yeah, Fresh Truck really worked in collaboration with a lot of health centers and the Greater Boston Food Bank and other food organizations in Boston.
We are starting to see some of that kind of collaboration here, with a couple of the major medical groups um, deciding to make food security their priority, one of their priority issues. And I, it may be ungracious of me to say, well, it's about time. The idea that doctors could graduate and practice with one class in nutrition
Mm-hmm.
totally boggled my mind, because so much of our health is bound up in diet. But anyway, be that as it may, um, I know we're using up a lot of time, because it is such a pleasure to talk to you. Um, you are going to be you're good. Um,
Thank you.
but I can totally see you kicking it with Manny J Media on the couch. He likes to do, in the spring and summer, talks in the park.
Oh,
Sit on a park bench with him and talk about issues that are important. Um,
that would be incredible. Um, Deb, I know I could keep talking to you forever. Uh, um, what else? Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we hit or get?
um,
I was just thinking, should we just put this up as a podcast?
if I had had time to do something about my face and my bald head, um, I would love to see us rejuvenate food radio
Hmm.
because podcasts are so much bigger now than they were when we were doing food radio.
I
So there's,
forgot about food radio. That was just before I got there.
yep, it was Liz what
Liz Sheehan Castro.
yes, it was Liz Sheehan Castro. Was that was her baby. And yeah, we absolutely there are so many different places we could talk to about food because it's so interwoven with everything. Um, Let me think. There are so many different what so what do you have a special interest? Do you have something that's your baby? Like my baby is fresh, healthy recipes and helping people learn how to use this awesome food. What's your special baby?
Um, I mean, my baby is the food system. It really is. I really think about it all the time and about the ways that it has changed and shifted kind of in front of us and around us over the last 50 years and longer, but really seeing the ways that that's happened. That's kind of like the thing that I think about all the time. My like more fun baby is baking. I took about 5 years and got my culinary degree and thought I'd
Oh,
work in restaurants for the rest of my career. And that's kind of how I got back into food. I are really into food. I did that in 2011 to 2016, or 2014, something like that. Anyway, so cooking and baking is really my like the thing that I do right now. As when the sourdough thing hit during the pandemic, I was like, I know how to do that. That had baking has been a thing of mine for a long time. And then the other piece is I run. I used to run marathons. I don't anymore because of a knee injury. But I founded a marathon in my hometown, and it raises money for our local food program in Woodstock, Connecticut. So every year in the spring, I pull a bunch of people together and they run 26.2 miles through Woodstock, Connecticut, which is a very hilly town. Um,
that is
and
so cool.
yeah, and so that's a lot. It's one of the best days of the year. This last year was really hard for me in a lot of ways, and the day of the marathon was full of a lot of joy and a lot of laughter. And it finishes at my friend's brewery and winery, Taylor Brook Brewery and Winery in Woodstock. And the day was just full of like a lot of joy and um, uh, community activity. And we raised more than $11,000 last year,
Wow.
almost all from small donors. So,
That's incredible. So
yeah.
one last question. Um, what direction are you going to take the food bank in? What message do you have for the community about what's going to happen at the food bank once you take over?
So I think my first message is um, I am looking forward to collaborating with the community. I'm looking forward to bringing the voice of um, the end user, the folks who utilize our food pantries and meal programs to light and the solutions that they know of and can speak to, and make sure those conversations are being had, and to bring those conversations to the halls of power and policymaking. But really, my next steps will be about collaboration and moving forward in the ways that we need to. There are a lot of um, really incredible technological steps that have been taken in food banking and by Feeding America, and kind of best practices that are happening around the country. And I think Worcester County is well poised to take advantage of some of that work and research for relatively low cost, and kind of like take those steps pretty early on, and then from there we'll decide together where we go.
Awesome. You want to turn off the recording?
Yeah. Do I know how to stop
There
it?
should